Kia ora guys, welcome back to the Black Jersey. My name's Max and I'm the host of this channel. A big thank you always goes to my wonderful patrons over on Patreon. If you're a new viewer, I'm going to remind you to subscribe to me and like this video if you enjoy my content. After Eddie Jones was announced as the new Wallabies coach earlier today, Steve Borthwick, his successor over at England, has named their international team for the Six Nations of 2023, and I've got some somewhat mixed feelings about this team. There's a few good things I have to say, but overall, England fans, you really get what you wished for, and I'm not in favour of how a lot of this whole thing is going to go. There's a few notable omissions, including Tom Curry, who is injured. There's no Sam Underhill, Anthony Watson, Johnny May, Jack Nowell, or Billy Vunipola, the latter of which is a very good omission, but for a lot of these selections, it's pretty much just more of the same that I believe they would have got with Eddie Jones. There's not many uncapped players either, so is this truly the fresh new direction that all the England fans wanted? I'm not sure, man. First off, we're going to go into the hookers. George McGuigan and Jack Walker are both uncapped. Nick Dolly and Jamie Blamire were really brought out by Eddie Jones as great successors for the long-serving Jamie George, but unfortunately, they've all pretty much been shoved out the window. In come a 29-year-old and a 26-year-old who are both uncapped. McGuigan does score a lot of tries, which is a good thing for a hooker in the modern game, as the driving maul is so common. Jamie George, there for experience, goes without saying. Jack Walker, I'm not too familiar with though, so I'm going to hope that he's up to test standards as it is a World Cup year. Over to the props. A captain, as far as I've seen, hasn't been named, but it'll probably be Alice Genge, considering he was Steve Borthwick's captain over at Leicester. Mako Vunipola has been retained, unlike his brother, which I think is a good call. You do need a big dude that's experienced to come off the bench and just hit those rucks hard, and Mako Vunipola is a much safer bet than Joe Marler. Bevan Rod in there as a third choice, a young guy who's up and coming, has a lot of promise. I think that's a very sensible decision to go for Bevan Rod. Kyle Sinclair, no surprise, it goes without saying that he was going to get back in, but are you kidding me with Dan Cole getting a recall? It's nice for sentiment that he'll be able to reach his 100th test cap, but are we serious? The dude is a fossil. That's why he has been given his surname. Dan Cole is a phenomenal scrummager, but he's no longer up to test standard when it comes to meeting the requirements of what's around the field. Ruck speed is more important than the scrum in the modern day, whereas you also need someone who's very smart and not going to give away too many penalties, and he does give away a fair few. Remember, this is not 2017, 2016 when he was at his peak anymore. He is really getting on, so I'm hoping this is not a long-term plan at all. Joe Hayes, though, has come in as the third choice with Will Stewart injured. Joe Hayes is a very promising player, so I'm glad to see him in the team. With Courtney Laws being at the blind side, they've only gone for 4 locks. We'll discuss them. Ollie Chessum, a rugby analyst who I've done a few videos with before. He's a big fan of Ollie Chessum, so he'll be very pleased to see the guy in there. Chessum's got a big frame as well, so there's no harm having him in there to get those lineouts. Johnny Hill, a British and Irish Lion, goes without saying he was always going to make his way into the team. Just hopefully he's going to have better form than he did in the end of year tests last year. Nick Ezekway, I'm kind of still a bit 50-50. I think the jury's out about whether he's good enough to make a match day 23, but no harm having him in the wider training squad. Maro Itoje was always going to get there based on reputation, but I'm also pretty disappointed not to see David Ribbons in there because, man, he has been tearing it up as of late. I mentioned Courtney Laws in there before. He's there as a blindside flanker and lock cover, so they've only really gone for 4 specialist locks. I kind of get that, as Laws would probably be my preferred pick for captain. Lewis Ludlam's in there as well, with no Sam Underhill, no Tom Curry. You're really going to need Ludlam's experience from the 2019 World Cup to build towards 2023. Jack Willis, despite signing a deal over in France, despite having just been a part of the whole Wasps conundrum, he has made his way into the squad. That is very good, as he's going to be needed to win those crucial turnovers. Ben Earl, one of the most exciting players in the English Premiership, he is in there. A lot of the fans will be over the moon, very happy to see Ben Earl. Same with Ben Curry. He's finally going to get another crack at Test rugby. He's far behind his brother Tom in terms of Test caps, but it's alright. He's getting a chance to prove himself properly, I hope. Alex Dombrandon at number 8. Bro, I'm going to give that a green light every day. Some people complain that he doesn't carry hard enough, but look at the weight of him, look at the liner option, look at the turnovers, look at the tackling. He's just in everything, and he's so much fitter than his body weight would suggest. Sam Simmons, though, everyone knows what I think of Sam Simmons. He's not up to scratch at Test level. I'm just going to move on, because if you don't have anything nice to say, you don't say it. Righto. Halfbacks. Ben Youngs is going to extend his record as England's most capped ever player, and I think that one was pretty obvious considering the Leicester ties that Steve Borthwick has to a few of the players in this squad. Jack van Poortvliet gets a similar benefit, as those two are going to make a very telling 1-2 axis across the Six Nations. Alex Mitchell, after just one Test cap at 25 years old, is there as the third choice. I'd have much preferred to see Rafi Quirk, who's a bit more of an entertainer, has a very crisp pass, but they have gone for Alex Mitchell. It's alright though, I guess. Like, there's a lot of very solid halfbacks in that country, so things happen. Over at First Five, they do have 3 players. Owen Farrell, probably up there in terms of the conversation for captain. He has scored 1,000 points and played 100 tests. After all, not everybody can say they have achieved that, especially with the high standards of England. I'm just hoping that this isn't the end of the Farrell-Smith 12-10 axis though, because my goodness, do they need Marcus Smith at 10. He is the best 10 in world rugby, so it's going to be very interesting as to how this whole thing operates, with Nick Evans, a former All Black, being the attack coach. Finn Smith, who is 20 years old, currently plays for Northampton. I had not actually heard of him before until today, so I did a bit of a quick research, and he was one of the survivors from Worcester who managed to get himself a contract. Man, oh man, this is not how I thought things would go. I thought that George Ford perhaps would be in for a recall, as he was one of Steve Borthwick's players at Leicester until he joined Sale Sharks. Perhaps the door is shut on George Ford for good. And at centre, very interesting. Dan Kelly's just got 1 Test cap, but he's a big man with some very good attacking threat. Nice kicking, good distribution, solid pick over there. But Manu Tuolangi, why? You've got to be joking me. He has not improved since 2010. He can't pass, he can't kick, he can't offload. He's just a straight bulldozer who has nothing else to offer. I don't get why people still continue to select Manu Tuolangi for rugby teams at all. I just don't think he's very good at all. Henry Slade at 13 though. Now that is something very good. Henry Slade, with his ability as an all-round player, I think complements a Farrell-Smith 10-12 access very well. So I'm glad he's remaining around, considering he's played 50 tests. Joe Marchant, I rate him highly. He's a very good attacking threat, but as he's off to France, I'm a bit unsure as to how it's going to work with his abilities and his availability. Same with Sam Simmons. But Elliot Daly's recall, same old. He has kind of got back into the groove with Saracens, but after he went on the last Lions tour, I'm still getting a bit of a bad aftertaste in my mouth. So again, I think the jury's still out on Daly despite his experience. To the outside backs, as I mentioned, no Johnny May, no Jack Nell. The outside backs, though, are gleaming with talent and new names. Tommy Freeman, probably not as good as Joe Cock and Asiga, but considering they want a bit of power, maybe is not too bad after all. Henry Arundel's out injured as well, so I guess that's just what you got to do. With Ollie Hassel-Collins, though, no problems over there, man. He's very, very, very entertaining to watch. A very good player. Max Malins, he's kind of one of those players that I find a bit awkward. Like, he's not a 10, he's not a winger, he's not a fullback, he's not a centre. He's just one of those utilities who has never been able to cement himself in a true jersey. So the jury's a bit out on him as well. Caden Murley uncapped. Green light to that every day. I'm seeing reels of him pop up all over the place and I cannot stop watching them. And of course, Freddie Stewart, my pick for fullback in my World 15. I'm not debating that. You guys know how I think about Freddie Stewart, but to the squad overall, as I said, a bit of a mixed feeling. England fans, if your team, heaven forbids it, loses to Italy in the Six Nations, you've got only yourselves to blame. And when Steve Borthwick wins potentially, maybe I'll reassess my priorities. My feelings do remain very mixed about the whole ordeal, especially seeing Eddie over in Australia. So this is going to be a very intriguing tournament indeed for me. Fingers crossed England don't drop the ball, try to keep the ball in the forwards. I really hope they do get things cracking out wide. That'll be it for me today because it's 1 a.m. here in New Zealand. So I will catch you guys later. You have a good one. Cheers, guys, from Max.